Hi everyone, it's Mr. Barden here. Today I'm going to be talking about just how to set up and start utilizing parallel processing in your DAW session. Before I get started though, I do just want to say that first off, none of this is sponsored in any way. This is just going to be a general intro video to the concept. I'm not going to be diving into a lot of the math and the behind the scenes stuff or how to do exactly X, Y, Z. This is more just to introduce the idea so that way you can go and explore in your DAW of choice exactly how this works and find what you like and what sounds cool for what you're doing. So with that being said, let's just hop right into it. So I'm using Studio One 6 for this. This concept will work in just about any modern DAW. It doesn't have to be this one. You can use whichever one you like. However, the process may be a little bit different from program to program. So just be aware of that. If you do want to check it out using this program, you can find, a free trial online. I'll put a link down below. It's not sponsored or anything, but I like this one, so I'll share it. So again, I've got a session here in Studio One open with just a sound file I pulled from an old project I did a few months ago. If we play it here. There's that. You get the idea. It's a little, music box theme for a thing I did. So to introduce this, I'm going to open up the mixing panel here. And you may be familiar already with kind of the general way that the signal flows, but I'm just going to break it down real briefly. So you've got your audio source here, and this is on a track or a channel, which we can see vertically right here. And generally speaking, the audio signal moves from top to bottom. So you have your sound, it runs through the various inserts or effects or plugins, depending on what your program calls them. We're going to skip over the sends because that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. And then you can control all of the output routing and things of that this nature until it gets to the final mix that goes out to the main computer outputs. That's, again, in a very, very brief nutshell. The reason I bring up why you might be familiar with this is because the way I learned is, you have your track and you can go and find your effects that you want to use and drop them in. I'm going to use a reverb for today, I think. So I'm just going to go find I have the favorites folder. I should probably actually use that. Room reverb. Where'd you go? Room reverb. So I'm just gonna drop it on there. We're just gonna leave it on the default because that part's really not important. But you just put the audio directly onto the channel. Now there's nothing wrong with that. This is just a different way to do it. I like doing what I'm about to show you next, the whole purpose of this video, because it gives me more flexibility and more control. But doing it, just putting it on the track, if that's what you want, great. But just to hear that now, I'm going to play it with that. So again, you're hearing a little bit more reverb coming through. Nothing wrong with this anyways, but there's not quite enough for me control to what I can work with. So what I want to do is to be able to adjust the amount of reverb very easily, very intuitively, and get a nice little balance. It doesn't necessarily sound like I've put a reverb effect on the sound. It'll sound more like it's sounding in this space. That's the goal. Again, you don't want it to sound as computerized, generally speaking. So what you can do in Studio One, if you right click here, we have a whole bunch of options to add different channels. And now each of these, more so behind the scenes, has things that make them unique. I'm not going to break them down right now, but essentially they work in a way that you can send a signal to them and have them do something, and then that gets added back into the main output at the end. That's, again, very broadly speaking. But what we're going to be focusing on is what I have my mouse right here is an FX channel. And if you click on that, it'll just add a channel right here. So this, if you might have been able to tell by the name, there went the clock. If you haven't been able to tell by the name, is for adding effects and things of that nature. You can give it a name in Studio One if you want. Reverb, cool. And what you can do is essentially add a effect or a chain of effects to this channel instead. So we're just gonna hide that. No, I wanted to collapse you. Collapse, there we go. So now the reverb is a separate thing. One way you could think about this is you have a separate unit that you're sending the audio to that's adding the reverb, and then it's coming back in to the main mix. That's in fact how a lot of this was done, especially prior to it all being on a computer, is you would have physical units and you had to connect them up and send the audio around. It would do the things and bring it back, and you'd be mixing it all in just like I'm talking to you right now. So let's do this. So we've got our reverb on a separate little FX track. They're all going to the main. So we can go to this section here called sends. And this is where we can, well, send an audio to a bunch of different places. Right now, we only have two real options, that being the main output and reverb. As we start to add more and more stuff in our projects, you'll see more of these pop up, and you can also add, more bus and FX channels as you need. I'm not going to break down all that right now, but we're just going to select reverb. So boom, right there. We'll bring this up a bit so we can see it. Basically, you can have a certain amount of sends and receives going on. You'll see right here every thing sending to it. If we added more and more, these little blue ticks line up, and that just tells you, hey, this is all the stuff sending to this channel. But anyways, right here you can see the level that's being sent, so you can raise it up or more. You can make it happen before or after the fader level. That's up to you. But we are now sending the audio to two places, and that's what's important. So we're sending it out the main channel just like normal. That's the first one. And we're also sending it to the reverb. So the reason I'm doing this is because this is, again, what we call parallel processing. So we're doing, we're sending the signal, but we're also processing it in parallel. So it's going to the same place from the same source, but through a different route. All right, it's happening at the same time. So we're doing two different things to the same sound at the same time. That's the idea that we have going on here. So now, if I pull this slider all the way down and play it, we're not hearing any reverb, but as I bring it up, we'll bring it back down just a hair. We get more and more of that reverb as we go. And this is where that fine level of control comes into play. So by doing this, you can, again, set up a very specific effect or chain of effects that you want to implement. You can raise up the level as needed, and you can have more or less of that. I really like using this for reverb because, as you notice, I can specify exactly how much or little I want. And you can, by fine-tuning that while still having the main source at the main level, I find, at least, that it will make it sound like you've still got the sound source, here, and it's nice and cleared in front of you, but then you can bring up all of those echoes from the room around it, and just sounds a little bit more realistic rather than just slapping an effect onto the sound. That can sometimes sound a little processed, which, at least for what I do, isn't always what I want. So this is, again, it in a nutshell, just a very short introduction to the idea of how you can start implementing it in Studio One and a little bit of what it can sound like. Again, this is such a broad concept just in general. I'm not going to be deep diving into anything, but in pretty much any DAW, you could make a channel like this and load up whatever you need to on it for that parallel processing. It doesn't have to be a reverb. In fact, in Studio One, I can just pull up whatever I want to pull up. It could be, I have a lot of stuff in my favorites. It could be a lot of stuff. Maybe we'll add, that didn't, oh no, there it went. We'll add a tape effect and other things like that. And we can play it. Maybe I want a bit more, so we'll bring it up. Maybe I want less of the original, so we'll bring it. We can adjust that mix as needed. And that's, again, pretty much it in a nutshell. If I wanted to send only the one sound out of the one channel and only the non-processed out of the other, you can do that. There's a lot of control options to play with. So I highly encourage everyone, just play around, see what is cool. That's how you find new techniques and new sounds, and just mess around and see what you like. So with that being said, I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to start with the outro here. So if you enjoy the video, great, like, comment, subscribe. It definitely helps out the YouTube channel, doing all that YouTubey stuff. I realize I'm still talking over this, and I think that's where I'm going to end it. So with that being said, I will see you all the next time that I see you.